One. Hey, how's everybody doing today? Welcome back to another episode of Coffee Talk with Brohawk. And I'm extremely humbled to have my friend Jim Iyoob as a guest today. And Jim, I know you've been busy. I know you're involved with a lot of things. What are you up to these days? Tell our viewers a little bit about yourself and what you've been up to.
Hey, Mark. So first of all, thanks. It's great to see you and partner with you as always. But I appreciate the opportunity just to have a talk. I mean, this is something that's exciting for me and just for the community. But as you said, my name is Jim Iyoob. I am the Chief Customer Officer at eTech Global Services. I've been here 22 years. A little bit about me. I started my career as an agent.
Okay.
Believe it or not, and I don't want to date myself, but back when I was an agent, we had green screens, which probably half the audience doesn't know what that is. So
Oh my
that would be
gosh.
cool. They can go out and Google to see what that is.
There you go.
But pretty much what I've been up to is literally just trying to bring value to our industry, talk about some things that, you know, what I think about today is since I've been in the industry for over 30 years.
Yeah.
The job is the same, Mark. We talk about it all the time.
Yeah.
Still do the same thing. Now, what has changed is the customer's expectations over the decades. And
Yes.
that's really what I've been focusing on. How do I meet or exceed those customers' expectations? And that's kind of why we're going to talk today a little bit about it. But that's just a little bit about me and really where the industry is. Technology has changed. We talk about its enabler. But at the end of the day, our customers, that's what changed. And you as a company need to change to be up to speed, to be able to manage those new customers' expectations.
I love that. I mean, at the end of the day, how you pick up a phone, how you answer it, the mechanics of it may change, but guess what? The tactical aspects of it hasn't changed in
Mm-mm.
the 30 plus years that you and I have been in the industry. It's amazing. I always think back to remember the movie Bull Durham?
I do.
When they're like, hey, we've won one game, we win again tomorrow. It's two in a row. We win another one. It's three in a row. It's called a winning streak. And then he gets into his whole discussion about, it's a simple game. You throw the ball, you catch the ball, you run, and it's an easy game. And when you were going through that, that's exactly what I'm thinking about. Is it's the work we do here is fairly easy. And I think that sometimes some organizations try to make it too complicated.
Agreed.
I know that you're really involved with quality analytics. Speaking about complications, um, and they're such a hot topic and have been for a while. And I've been very intrigued about the work that you do, on a daily basis. But what got you into the analytics aspects of contact centers?
Yeah. So great question. So when I was a young leader, before speech to text and AI was even out,
Yeah.
I always said there's got to be a better way to do this. Because if
Hmm.
you think about contact centers, even when I was a frontline leader, what was I doing? Listening to 3, 4 calls. All my decisions were biased based on
Yeah.
how that agent performed that day. So in 2003, when I was with eTech and moved to India, I was in India for almost 3 years, setting up those global operations. So now it inserted me into a different world. So I'm new, not as a leader, but new into a country.
Yeah.
I have to teach everybody's brand new. Let's be clear, right?
Yes.
What can I do? So luckily, Matt Rocco, who I've been with for over 30 years in my career, he's our president and CEO. I said, listen, I got an idea. Got to be a better way to do this. So long story short, I actually hired 200 people to literally manually listen to calls
Okay.
in addition to what our frontline leaders were doing. And I taught them, give me beyond a checkbox. So
Yes.
we built our own tech stacks, and long story short, all that came into fruition. And what it did was they delivered to not only me, but my coaches, who to coach, what to coach, and how to coach. So that was before AI. So then what got me into the analytics space is everybody came to me and says, I'm going to remove all your QAs. And I laugh because, by the way, AI is not replacing people's jobs. Okay. It kills me in the industry how these tech companies come up and say, I'm going to remove all your people. But long story short, since I had all this data already, I tested out a bunch of AI companies and I saw some of the stuff they did was cool. Some of it not so cool, but it gave me an advantage in the space because they all say, give me, 10,000 of your calls. Well, most companies don't have the data. So I was in an advantage in the analytics space because I already knew what happened on the call. Because remember, I've already analyzed it.
Yes.
So when I was able to go vet out these speech companies, and I won't name names, but I am software agnostic. I use about 6 different tech stacks. But one in particular, I sent them 1,000 calls. And they came back and said, congratulations, Jim. 96% CSAT on your agents. Great job what you're doing. I said, you're out. They're like, what do you mean I'm out? I said, because the 1,000 calls I sent you were all bottom performing agents. They were all on performance improvement plans. And your tech stack yet told me they were great. So that tells me it's not that good. So that's the difference. And when I got into that, that's what got me excited. Like so then I started learning the engine. Then I started learning how it works. When you think about how this technology works, it's a human being programming that machine.
Exactly.
And I tell people who believe this myth in the industry, it's set it and forget it. It's one of the biggest lies in the industry.
Yes.
It's not Propel's rotisserie. You don't just set this machine. It's not a plug and play solution. There's so many things. And that's what got me into it to say, hey, how do you effectively use analytics to give that outcome to help my new customers' expectations that we talked about in the beginning? And that's what really got me into it.
That's a great story. From the aspect of having the answers to the test before you actually take the test or give the test out. And more companies really need to be doing those things. I mean, don't expect that and I'm technology agnostic as well. When you go out, I mean, and start doing these demos and start hearing what everybody's professing, they're all saying the same thing. They're just a little bit different of an emphasis. As far as where they think their sweet spot is. And there's zero substitute for the human being able to understand what the analytics are providing back to you. I love that. So based on some of your experience, I mean, you've set up these analytics programs, for within your company. And I know you speak frequently about setting up analytics programs, but what would be, your top recommendations for setting up a new analytics program? Because believe it or not, when people, I mean, we both know this, when people made the big pivot, 2 years ago, and now 2 years, 3 years later, they're like, well, what do I do with all this now? Where do I go from here? So what would be your top recommendations? But also, I'm gonna, go northeast here for a second and call it a pothole. So what would be your top recommendations and your top potholes that you would caution people about?
Great question. So I've been down this path. So first and foremost, I agree with you. These tech companies, remember, they all came to us to sell eTech. eTech's got 3,600 agents across 3 countries and 10 sites. They all want all the business, and they all say we're going to automate everything. And the problem is they're selling you what their solution does without understanding what my goal is. So first and foremost, the company needs to define the goal that they're trying to accomplish. Is it sales? Is it service? Is it, reduction of handle time or, call deflection? The company has to define the goal, not the vendor. That's my number one. Number two, which all of my tech partners are going to hate me saying this, start small. Because when all of these tech companies came to me, they looked at eTech as 3,600 employees. That's a huge contract for any sales guy.
Hmm.
And I'm saying you're not getting it all.
Yeah.
We'll do one program. We'll start small, because if your
Yes.
system can do what you tell me it can do, it should be
Uh-huh.
very easy to scale. And most of the sales guys will tell you, yes, but you get volume discounts. I'm not worried about the volume discount, because if I buy a 10 million minutes or hours, whatever you call it,
Hmm.
and it doesn't work, you've actually got me in more trouble, right? Let's
Yes.
start small. So that's why e-tech is so, I think, veered in the industry as a thought leader, because we go to our customers and say, listen, you don't need 100% of your calls right now, because I'm going to give you 2 million data points. You weren't going to do anything with it. You haven't done anything yet. So let's start small, and then let's grow and let it pay for itself. Because when you're ingesting analytics,
Yep.
if it can't pay for itself, you shouldn't be doing it. Which brings you to the potholes or things you got to avoid.
Yep.
Number one, don't try to cover everything, because
Hmm.
there's 2 million data points. I look at it, we call it low hanging fruit.
Yep.
You have all opportunities. But let's be honest, the average person can only manage a couple things. If you can't go to an agent and say, here's 58 things you did wrong on the call, but you
Yes.
can go and say, here's a couple, right? So
Yep.
that's what I say. Don't try to cover everything. That's the major pitfall, because people who are analyzing data sees all this data and see, but you can't execute all. You have to execute in buckets, 2 to 3
Yes.
things, boom, move on.
Yep.
Also, the number two pitfall I see everybody is they're comparing AI output with human output. So
Yep.
first and foremost, let's be clear. People make mistakes. If you're manually listening to calls, people make mistakes.
Yes.
If you're using AI, machines make mistakes because they're programmed by human beings. The biggest mistake we have seen is when you take human classification and compare it with AI classification. It's different.
Yes.
Machines are unbiased. They
Yep.
do what you tell it to do. There is no objectivity in there. People are biased, because people say, well, that's just how Jim sounds.
Hmm.
People tell me all the time, which is why I love to trick machines, especially people who talk about, um, sentiment based on tone of voice. Are you kidding me?
Hmm.
I am the most passionate leader out there. I trick machines all the time because they say I'm pissed, I'm frustrated. No,
Yes.
I'm passionate. So that's the reason machines have to be coded correctly, because you have to be able to account for that. Does that
Yes.
does that help?
It does. Well, let me ask you a question, because I love the the piece that you just talked about having these 58 data points, and just focusing on the two things that you did that are the most impactful that you did wrong. I see a lot of people also getting focused on what's not going right, as opposed to let's capitalize on what we are doing right, and feed that into some of our coaching and development also. Would you say that that's kind of a miss that a lot of companies have?
That's definitely a miss, and it's actually second nature to us. So I didn't
Yeah.
bring it up, but to answer your question, we call it replicate successful behaviors.
Yeah. Hmm.
So we're able to go down to an agent level,
Yep.
and we can see, forget what training told me, and I'm not
Hmm.
knocking trainers. I always get myself in trouble, but training did a good job. Okay, but let's be clear, everybody learns differently. So when you
Yes.
find out what the most successful behaviors are by analyzing all the data,
Hmm.
then you can overlay that to all your agents, and you can see
Yes.
what are the most successful attributes, or we call them behaviors. These are
Hmm.
the most successful behaviors that happen to make a successful outcome. And when you overlay that, and you've nailed it, here's the holy grail.
Yep.
If you're on a sales program, for an
Hmm.
example, and somebody's at 60% conversion rate, and you look at them and say, man, it's a rounded agent. They're doing all these behaviors really well.
Yep.
And then you have a number two agent who's at 50% conversion rate on a goal of 30%. And I'm just making up
Yep.
numbers. But wait a minute. Out of the three behaviors, they're killing it on rebuttaling. They're killing it on asking for sale, but they're not doing good in creating urgency, as an example.
Hmm.
So now I can bring that rep in and say, wait a minute, you're killing it. You're above objective, number one, because you
Yep.
can't go to the agent and say, I mean, everybody can get better. But
Yes.
when you go to the agent and say, you're only creating urgency 10% of the time. If I can teach you this skill, your conversion will go to 60%, you'll make more money, you'll do this. That's how you replicate successful behavior instead of taking everybody in and using a blanket statement, y'all need to do better at this. You can pinpoint specifically on a behavior and teach it. We call it targeted coaching. So it's targeted to a behavior versus a rounded answer.
You know, I love the fact that you target in on behaviors, because I've been having some conversations with folks. Instead of focusing on KPIs, which are the results, focus more on your KBIs.
Correct.
You know, that are going to really drive the results that you're trying to get to anyway. And if you're improving the behaviors and the things that people are doing tactically, then you won't have to worry about the performance indicators.
You're right. So we've actually, eTech, our team of data scientists and analysts created a thing called a key performance benchmark indicator.
Okay.
So it's an algorithm. So here's what happens in today's world. People look at quality as a score. I have published 3 books with my president, long life mentor and friend. And one of the quotes we both say in this book is quality is a behavior. It's not a score. But unfortunately, people look at a KPI as a score. So here's the problem with that analogy. When you look at a scorecard, they could be in the 80 percentile, which most people will say that's pretty good. But when you put it alongside our key performance behavior index, it might, and that runs on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being the worst, 5 being the best. We have seen people come in at a 2. So what that tells us is while they're at the 80 percentile, there's something critical that they're not hitting. And you click a button, it brings you down. So as an example, all the compliance stuff looks really good. So they're scoring 99% on all that. But the thing that drives my revenue, and I'll give you an example, a save queue. The agent's only saving 22% of the customers.
Yep.
That's an indicator because it's a 2, and you could drill down and say, ha. So while he's doing everything else great, he's not attempting to save on only 22% of the time. So that's how you actually go in and look at that, what you're saying, the same thing, the key performance behaviors that are actually driving the bottom line for the customer.
Yeah. Well, I love that. And at some point, I definitely want to dig in a little bit deeper to that level of analysis, because I think that's so mission critical in the industry.
We'll set up a call and I'll show you some of the stats. It's amazing what our analysts and data scientists and data engineers have done for eTech. You know, not only internally, but remember, we actually have customers that hire us externally just for the quality piece because we get it. We're a BPO. We're using these things to help grow our own company, so we're actually really good at
it. You know, I always shared with people, if you want to learn what's up and coming in the contact center world, go sit with the BPO. They're like light years ahead of the internal organizations.
Absolutely.
Typically. Speaking of that, technology is really impacting contact centers, at the speed of thought these days. And ChatGPT, similar tools seem to be top of everybody's mind. Where do you see these technologies taking the industry?
So that's a funny one. ChatGPT is everywhere. It's amazing. First and foremost, I love ChatGPT, but let's talk about what it does. It's literally a transformer that's using language transformer. That's really all it is. Now it's smart. By the way, it's only up till 2021, so don't ask it any current events, as you probably already know. And by the way, most contact centers are using some form of ChatGPT that they may not know of. So if you think about a chat bot, a voice bot, automation, really, that's what they're using. It's an NLU, which is natural language understanding. See, the difference with ChatGPT and an old school bot, a lot of people use large vocabulary databases or natural language processing. So what NLU does, it's contextual transcription. So to give you an example, let's take a simple one. AT&T. There's not a transcription engine in the world that will transcribe AT&T accurately. It'll come across on some of those as 8, 80, 18, based on what the person said. So when you use contextual transcription, thank you for calling 88018. My name is Jim. You've actually branded it correctly. That's the difference between contextual and large vocabulary databases. That's probably the easiest way to do it. Now, what I see in the industry is there is a lot of things that it can be used for. Simple. Reset password. Where's my order? Help me fill out a form, right? Those things can be done with this new technology very effectively. People say agents are going to be replaced. Again, largest lie in the industry. No, agents are not going to be replaced. Agents are going to be skilled up to handle more complex tasks. You will always need human beings. And in 2003, I coined this phrase to a lot of our customers when we were talking about chat. First of all, it's not your decision to tell me how to contact you. It's mine.
Yes.
If I want to pick up the phone and call you and I'm paying you for the service, I want that out. By the way, if I want to chat, give me the chat. If I want to use automation, give it to me. But it's not the brand's decision, especially if I'm paying for the service, to tell me how to contact you.
Yes.
So I think it helps agents, by the way, too, because what we're seeing in the industry is agents who are answering calls to reset my password and where's my order. It's a mundane task. They hate it. It's boring for 8 hours a day. So agents are actually liking this technology because it's letting them learn and get better, right? At more complex things to do. And it's not as mundane. That's what we're seeing.
I love that. Back when you and I started in the industry, we'll say early mid 90s, roughly, IVRs were really taking off. And what did you hear back then? IVRs are going to make contact centers agentless.
Oh yeah, you're right. That's right.
And today you have, I know in San Antonio back in 2018, 2019, I was looking at some numbers, and 4% of the population of San Antonio was working in a contact center.
Yep.
Not just 4% of contact center workers were working for a certain company, but 4% of the population.
Yep.
Like you said, contact centers are never going to get replaced. They're just going to be retooled and re-engineered to do more things that there hasn't been technology created for.
Agreed. Absolutely. And then you see all the memes out there now. Like, let's be honest, on the IVR, still not good. First thing you do, representative. That's the first thing we do because we hate going through IVRs.
Yes. And then I was on the phone with a company within the last week or so, and they said your anticipated wait time is going to be 17 minutes. 30 minutes later, I'm still waiting on hold. And it's like, oh my gosh, there's got to be a better way. There's got to be a better way.
Has to be.
So, Jim, I like I said, we've known each other for a few years now. You're an amazing networker. That's one of the things that I see is most incredible about you. Not only are you a great thought leader, but you're also an amazing networker. If I'm new to the industry, if I'm new to networking, I'm not sure, what does this networking thing really mean and whatnot? How should I approach networking with operational and thought leaders if I'm new to the industry?
Yeah, great question. So, I consider myself to be a people person. Right. So the first thing I do, I use LinkedIn. Like, my day consists, I get up at 5 a.m, get my coffee, turn on the news, open up my emails, open up LinkedIn, and I read. I try to read at a minimum an article a day, sometimes 2 or 3. Now, by the way, I have a ton of books. Here's the problem with books. It's a commitment.
Yes.
You got to commit. Because you can't read a book in 5 to 10 minutes. And so what I do is I go on LinkedIn and I look at other thought leaders and I engage with people. Like when I see something I agree with, I'll say, man, this is a good article, well written, really got some good tips from it. I like to read something that's 5 to 10 minutes because there's no excuse as a leader that I don't have 5 to 10 minutes to better myself.
Exactly.
People ask me all the time about AI. Well, I didn't wake up one day and understand it. I read article after article after article, and I'm always constantly looking at it. And after years and years, you become a master. It's like anything. You're not going to wake up and learn chess. You got to become a master. There's so much content out there that can educate you. And by the way, the thing you got to remember is there is good content and there's bad content. I try to go read people that are thought leaders like I consider myself. And I try not to go into all of the sales things. People are selling products or selling you their goal, where I'm looking at more understanding of it. The other thing I would encourage. So I get on average probably 20 LinkedIn requests a week. People don't even research. They don't even look. I get so many BPOs sending me messages. Hey, we're an outsourcer. We can help you with it. Man, do your research. Okay. At least look to see what we do first before you're trying to sell me their services. Second one, I respect salespeople. So I get tons of salespeople that reach out to me. Now, I've used some people, by the way, in some of my talks. So somebody will come out to me, try to sell me their service, and I'll respond to them, hey, listen, I've looked at it. There's no need. And, I got one yesterday, and the guy responded back, which I said, man, listen, I'd love to connect with you, but I'm not looking to change XYZ today, but happy to respond. Thank you so much for the feedback. I look forward to talking to you in the future, but that's what you do. And then you get other ones. Hey, no need, no interest, and then they continue to hit you with all those canned messages. Yes, but, and then I told the one kid, I said, dude, don't make me block you. Okay.
Yes.
So far, I've said no 11 times, and you keep using your canned responses to try to get an appointment with me.
Yes.
Said, the next message you send me on LinkedIn, I'm going to be forced to block you. And I said, I'm going to use this email trail, and the next time I speak in public.
Yes.
He responded. I kid you not.
Oh my gosh.
A couple of years ago. So that's what I would tell people. There's nothing wrong with connecting and networking because you could learn so much from each other. It's not always about a sale. It's about networking to use best demonstrated practices to help each other. Because by the way, you never know where that person will go someday, that there may be an opportunity. Right. So that's probably the biggest thing I would say about how I network. It's not about sales. It's about sharing information amongst your peers and friends to help them.
And I could probably add to that, in if you agree with this, it's about developing a relationship. You're not gonna sell somebody on a product or a service. Your first conversation, you have to develop. People do not want to be sold to.
Correct.
They want to develop a relationship, professional relationship, and see where it goes from there. Hey, what can I learn from you? Like you said, what can I learn from you? What can you learn from me? Sometimes stroking egos is not a bad thing.
No, and by the way, I 100% agree on the relationship building. That's kind of what I built, my whole career about, is building that relationship. I went through a book with eTech years ago called The Trusted Advisor. It's an unbelievable book, and I've learned to, you have to earn the right to be able to give advice.
Yes.
And by the way, it doesn't happen. And by the way, for people listening, it's a great book. Definitely enjoy it, read it. But just because you read the book doesn't give you the right. It takes years and years of repetitive relationship building to earn the right at the seat at the table. And I think that's one of the opportunities a lot of people tell me, is why they respect me, because I'll give you advice, whether, you're my competitor, my friend, or just somebody I met. It's okay to give advice and based on your experience, and that's how you build those relationships. 100% agree.
I love it. And, we're about to get into the speed round, and one of the, one of the questions, well, I'll go ahead and ask the question at the end here. But you ready for the speed round, Jim?
I'm ready, sir.
All right. So what fact about Jim would people most be surprised to learn about you the most?
So it's a good one. Probably the thing that only my friends know is I love to cook. I am a foodie. So literally I could talk about food anywhere. When I meet customers that are in like New York, right? And they're telling me where they're from. I'll name bagel shops, cookie places in New York
Love it.
from the East Coast. Um,
Uh-huh.
I think that's probably the other one. And I am a sushi chef. I have sushi classes at my house. We bring people
Nice.
in and create. I just love food because, again, when you talk about relationships,
Yeah.
forget about the business. Everybody has a life. What can you all agree on? We all have to eat. Okay. And if you're passionate about something, like I'm passionate about analytics, get me, no
Yeah.
mistake about it. But I'm very passionate about food too.
I love it. I love it. So, what is your signature dish?
So there's so many, but what I like to do, so I have an outdoor kitchen. My wife is been with a staple in my life and career and personal. So she knows I like food. So I have a rotisserie outside, like the Brazilian steakhouse. I literally have 6 pits that you
Nice.
can cook the Brazilian steakhouse. So that's one of my favorites. I also have a
Uh-huh.
pizza oven.
All
Okay.
right.
My neighbor's from Italy. She makes the dough. So I have a pizza oven that cooks at 1800 degrees. Then she also got me the Blackstone, which I love to do
Mhm.
hibachi. But I think sushi's probably my signature because I've actually done sushi for probably 8, 9 years, maybe even longer now. But I love sushi and sashimi. So that's probably my signature. But if there's just so much, I just love all food. I make
I
homemade
love it.
gnocchis from scratch, things like that.
Man, I love it. I love it. Um, and obviously the camera doesn't go down that low on me, but I love food too. So, and so where's your ideal off the grid location?
So when I travel with my boss, Matt, we used to love Isla, Isla Mujeres out in Mexico. Last couple of years after COVID, our new favorite place is the Bahamas. And there's a reason because we love cruising, we love being disconnected. Um, and the Bahamas, we go to Atlantis. We love Atlantis because it's this water park that would never be allowed in America. Like there is definitely no OSHA laws out there. Like their definition of they have this river that literally has waves in it. I mean, and you're getting tipped over. So like you'll never get that experience in America. So that's
Yeah,
one of my off the place grids that I love.
awesome. Oh my gosh. I am gonna have to venture there at some point. So very cool. So if someone wants to, going back to, kind of our discussion on networking, if someone wants to draw on your experience with either quality analytics or in the contact centers, or they have a challenge that they just want to kind of bounce off of you, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Yeah, so thank you so much for that. So first and foremost, one of my other passions is helping others. I mentor a lot of people,
Mhm.
whether they work for me or not. So the best way, it depends on what you're looking for. To answer your question, if you're looking for the professional analytics and mentorship, LinkedIn is easy. Jim Iyoob is easy to find. There's not a lot of Iyoobs out there. All the salespeople who keep sending me emails under Iyoob, remember my last name starts with an I, not an L. So
Yeah.
I love when people come to me, Mr. Iyoob, I admire you. No, you don't because you haven't even learned how to use a capital I. But anyway, LinkedIn would be the professional. Now, if you want the funny side of Jim Iyoob, okay, I would hit me up on Instagram at
Okay.
Jim Iyoob or Facebook because I put all my sarcastic stuff out on Instagram and Facebook.
Nice.
Today's quote, which I'll tell you, um, let's see what today's that went out. Today's was you can now get a junk drawer starter kit for people who just bought a new home. So literally, it's a picture of a little kit that has the tape, the band-aids, all the crap
Nice.
which we all have. So I try to be sarcastic on Instagram and Facebook just because I take what I do very seriously, but I
Uh-huh.
don't take myself seriously because if you enjoy what you do every day, you're not actually working. You're having fun. So I like to have that. But you can find me on Facebook and Instagram as well. That's more of my sarcasm stuff versus my professional stuff.
That's awesome. It's funny. I say the same thing about my golf game. I take it about as seriously as it takes me, which isn't very. So,
Well, I like to tell people the same thing. Like, you golf? Yes. And I like to see the entire course.
yes, I can guarantee 10 to 15,000 steps every round.
Absolutely. And by the way,
And
I'll
that's
give
what,
everybody my email. My email is easy to remember. I don't make you
yeah,
spell my last name. It's Jim at etechgs for globalservices.com. Feel free to reach out to me. I love meeting new people, love sharing best demonstrated practice and ideas. I'm happy to talk to anybody.
fantastic. Jim, thank you very much for the gift of your time today. I really appreciate it. Great conversation, and I look forward to having some off-camera conversations with you about some of the things we talked about today too. So
Absolutely. And I'll see you April 13th up in Austin at the
that's
event.
right. Yeah, at the
Absolutely.
ACCA event. So hey, thanks a lot. And everybody that sees this video, please like, comment. If you need me to do an introduction with you and Jim, not that he's going to need me to do an introduction for him, but if you want me to go ahead and introduce him to you, I'd be more than happy to go ahead and do it. Jim, thank you very much, and have a great rest of the day.
You too. Thank you.